letting you know, folks, like this entire meetup session is going to be recorded, and later on we're going to chop the video, edit it, and upload the talks one by one on YouTube. So for folks who are unable to join at this point of time, they can actually go through the talks at a later point of time. Great. I think we have 17 participants. We also have Gautam from Grafana just joining us. So yeah, Gautam has been very crucial to getting us to organize this whole thing. Has been helping us along the way since day one. So yeah, shout out to him. Cool. So I'll just start with a small introduction of our first speaker, Anane. If I'm pronouncing that right, or if I'm not butchering your name, it's okay.
Actually, before going there, do you also want to give a quick intro of how we started the meetup and what's
absolutely.
the broad
Absolutely.
Because I think many folks are new this time, so would help give the broad.
Yeah, we have some usual suspects. We have Karan, we have Akash, who are sort of friends. So good to have them over again. Karan was a speaker last time. So yeah, a quick short backstory about the meetup. It sort of happened in a very impromptu way. Richie H from Grafana, Richard, he basically tweeted out one day that he would like to start organizing this local meetups sponsored by Grafana Labs at various cities, and sort of start this culture of observability meetup, and where practitioners from the same area sort of get together and they get to discuss what they're working on, they get to talk about what they're working on, stuff like that. And Pranay and I were the first to jump in on the conversation. We were just sort of pounced on it, and it's yes, we're going to do this. And so that conversation led to some very constructive discussions. I have known Gautam also for some time now, last couple of years. We have interacted over various meetups, conferences. So the whole thing turned out pretty well. Gautam also jumped in on the mail thread, and what we have right now is this Bangalore Observability Meetup. Pre-COVID, of course, this was supposed to be a real-world meetup where we would have had a full setup, but then given the current situation, this is an online-only meetup. And yeah, this is the second edition that we're doing it. Last time we had 3 speakers with us. Gautam spoke on the features of Grafana 7.0. We had Karan talking about Victoria Metrics. And we had another speaker who talked about Azure Monitor. So this time around, we are sort of inadvertently theming towards tracing ecosystem. So there will be the first talk, which is by Anane, would be on Jaeger tracing and sampling, sort of brief introduction to this. And I will sort of be speaking on a new project, which folks may or may not have heard of, which is called OpenTelemetry. And this is a new observability or telemetry standard that has come up. This project, I'll give the actual introduction during the talk itself. But so the theme for this particular edition is going to be tracing and associated technologies. And yeah, that's where we are at today.
Cool.
Anything you'd like to add, Pranay? Any anecdotes, any interesting bits that I'm missing from my narrative?
No, nothing like that. I think we had a pretty good turn up in the last meetup, and we have an active Telegram group where people put questions, etc. So I would also post the links during the meetup here, and then folks here can join there. And yeah, we look forward to more contributions from you guys. So as Hashfire shared, we would love to have people speak about the work which they are doing in our group, just to share with the community, and look also forward to learning from you guys. So, yeah.
Also just to introduce my co-organizer Pranay himself. Pranay is the co-founder of an APM company called Signals.io, and he's building pretty interesting things in and around the open source observability ecosystem, including but not limited to OpenTelemetry.
Yeah, so I think Hashfire will talk more about that, and yeah, I think let's go ahead, man. I think we are already 15 minutes.
Cool. Excellent. We have 20 plus participants, although that includes the co-organizers, but that's still awesome. 11 a.m. on a Saturday in Bangalore. with everyone staying in. I think it's great participation. Cool. So I'll just do a sort of brief introduction for the first speaker, Anane, who was very kindly agreed to speak in this meetup. We connected a couple of weeks ago based on an amazing, blog post that he had recently written on scaling of tail sampler, and the conversation led to one thing and another. And now we have him here. He has been a contributor to multiple open source projects, including Jaeger, Cortex, and OpenTelemetry itself. So I am pretty sure this will be an excellent talk, and you folks would have a lot of great, takeouts from whatever he has to say. And cool. Over and out to Anane. I guess like we can start.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ashfar. I'm like really glad to be speaking here. Before we start, I'm just going to go ahead and mute everyone on the call. So if anyone has a request to unmute, feel free to like drop a message or request to unmute.
Yeah, and also just drop your questions which you have in the chat box, and then we'll take those at the end of the talk. That would be good. Yeah, and then go ahead and mute everybody.
Cool. I was just going to say that Ashfar actually sounds like he's talking from stage with the sound effect that's coming.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. Oh, you're on mute, Ashfar. Just muted you. You can unmute.
So that's because like I'm in my lobby, so it has better lighting conditions, but given that larger space, the echo is really bad. And if I open up the window, like I think this problem would go away. Let me fix that.
Yeah, no issues.
Well, yeah, let's continue. Cool. Over and out to you for the first talk of the day.
Yep. Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Cool. My screen should now be visible. Let me minimize all of these. And let me hide this. And my internet connection is unstable. But let's go ahead and go into present mode. Just give it 1 second. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So hello everyone. Welcome to Intro to Distributed Tracing and Jaeger. I'm Ananya Agarwal. I'm a software developer at Grafana Labs. And first of all, thanks to everyone. I know it's a weekend. You're all logging in at like 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning. So I promise to keep the text on my slides to a minimum. So, okay, with that, let's get started. So a little bit about me. My journey into open source sort of started in college with the Google Summer of Code with the LLVM compiler infrastructure, in which I worked on optimizing some TensorFlow kernels using polyhedral compilation. That was like a really long time ago. And after college, I was working as a site reliability engineer at an ad tech firm. And here I came across Jaeger and I started using it to sort of monitor the performance of services in production. And I started contributing to Jaeger and OpenTelemetry outside of my office time. And I got really interested in it. And soon, like Gautam reached out from Grafana, and like we've been roommates from college, but he said, if you want to do this full time, you might as well come join Grafana. So right now I'm a software developer working at Grafana. I work on Cortex, and I also help manage the tracing infrastructure internally. Outside of work, I really like football. I like traveling a lot. So that's a picture of me at the Camp Nou Stadium in Barcelona. And on the right, I really like to listen and record music. So that's a picture from the Bohemian Rhapsody, a movie about one of my favorite artists, Freddie Mercury from Queen. So cool. To get to the agenda of this talk, we'll take inspiration from Simon Sinek, who delivered a fantastic TED talk called How Great Leaders Inspire Action. I recommend everyone to check this out, in which he talks about the philosophy of delivering a pitch. Talks that all pitches should start with the question why, and then move on to how and what. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to start with why. Why do we need distributed tracing at all? So traditionally, we've been building applications with a monolithic architecture in mind, in which the entire logic for the user interface, business layer, and data interface sort of baked into a single application. Typically, this interacts with the database backend. And yeah, but recent trends have shown us that we're moving away from this monolithic architecture to a microservice architecture. And this comes with a lot of advantages because microservices have shorter development cycles. Different teams could own different microservices. They could be written in different languages. And then teams can iterate quickly on microservices because they don't have to touch the entire code base. They can scale independently under production workload. So we can have different number of instances of different microservices operating in production. They're also easy to operate and observe. Well, this is sort of debatable. We all know about Kubernetes.
I've been at the mercy of interesting network infrastructures. The network discussions around like how ACT is behaving and everything has been great.
Where are the folks who are monitoring Bangalore's network infrastructure?
I think we all have a local Grafana set up to do that.
Hey, Ananay, do you have any other network to which you can switch to? Because even when you're presenting earlier, it was like very shaky.
Okay, this was actually my backup network, which was my hotspot. Let me try switching to my home network.
So no issues. Like we were able to hear you, but it was like a bit like shaky. I think.
Let me try switching back to my home network, which is BSNL. So fingers crossed.
Okay. Yeah, actually, Darshan, that's a good suggestion.
Only Ananay is allowed to be on video.
Yeah, I will also switch off my video and then let's see. But then again, our video switching off wouldn't affect like his QoS. That's not how it would work. So I think he would have to switch off his video to decrease bandwidth and just.
I can actually do that. Let me go ahead and stop.
Let's just test it out. Let's just test it out. And if you can kindly start back from one slide previous to where you were, sure. Because I think the last part got chopped up before you dropped off from the connection.
So I'm just gonna go present again.
Yeah, we can see it.
So can you tell me which slide I should start from? I think I dropped off somewhere here.
Story, ma'am.
Start from Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
Cool. So yes, I think, okay, I hope this time it works. It's sharing so far. Cool. So yes, I was talking about Simon Sinek and how he delivered this amazing talk called How Great Leaders Inspire Action, in which he talks about the philosophy of delivering a pitch. And he says that it should always start with the question why, and only then we should move to the how and what of the problem. So that's what we're going to do in this. We're going to look at why we need distributed tracing at all. And then we're going to look at how we implement it and what the tool is. So cool, let's start with the why. So traditionally, we've been building applications with the monolithic architecture in mind, in which the entire logic for the user interface, the business layer, and the data interface is baked into sort of a single application. And like the black box at the bottom is sort of the database that the application interacts with. But recent trends have shown us that we're moving away from this kind of a monolithic architecture into a microservice architecture. And this comes with a lot of advantages because microservices have shorter development cycles. Different components could be written in different languages. Different teams could own different microservices, so they can iterate faster without touching the entire code base. They can also scale independently under a production workload. So we can have different number of instances of each microservice operating in the production environment. And they're also easy to operate and observe. Well, this is sort of debatable, and this is exactly what we're going to look at in this talk. Because we all know about Kubernetes, it's our favorite tool to observe, to operate microservices at scale. But observability is what we're going to be looking at for microservices, because microservices don't look like these beautiful hexagons in production. They typically look something like this. So this is a screenshot of Uber's production environment. And each of the green nodes actually represents a service, and the gray edge between them depicts the calls between these services. So you can see that in a production environment, in a mature production environment, the number of microservices can easily run into hundreds or even thousands. And when we interact with such a complex architecture, a single call may look like the pink line drawn through the architecture, right? It can traverse through multiple microservices. So let's look at some of the tools we traditionally use to monitor the performance of these applications in production. So typically we use monitoring tools coming from the metrics or logs realm. So these are some very popular tools. Starting from left, we have Prometheus and Influx. These are time series databases, and they belong to the metrics realm. They're useful for storing metrics. And on the right, we have Loki and Elastic, which are logging solutions. So Elastic is the company behind Elasticsearch and the Elk stack, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. And Grafana Loki is something that we'll talk about in a bit. So let's look at how some of these tools actually help us monitor the performance of services in production. So metrics are actually great. They're aggregatable, and they're an awesome way to get an overview of the performance of services in production. A quick look at one of these dashboards can pinpoint us to which part of the architecture is actually showing issues. And from there, we can drill down, look at logs or traces and so on, and figure out what the root cause is. And there are some best practices which we use to build dashboards on top of these metrics. One of these is called the RED method. It was founded by Tom Wilkie from Grafana Labs, and it talks about focusing on request error and duration metrics, because these metrics directly impact customer experience. And because an elevated number of errors or an increase in service latency can directly impact customer performance. So we build our dashboard tooling around focusing on these metrics. And there are also some intuitive ways in which we lay out our dashboards. So I'm not sure how visible the dashboard is on the right, but in this, the layout of the dashboard actually mimics our production environment. So the front-end service actually talks to the distributor, which talks to the ingester. And just by looking at the latency graphs, we can see that, hey, okay, the latency at the front end is 100 milliseconds, and at the distributor, it's 50 milliseconds. So that means the front end adds 50 milliseconds of latency and so on. So there are other good practices that we can use to build these dashboards. One of these is called the use method. It's based on utilization, saturation, and errors. And this focuses more on sort of network bandwidth and CPU saturation to see the health of the services in production. So metrics are also awesome because they're useful for alerting purposes. We can alert based on SLAs or SLOs. So SLAs are service level agreements that are signed between the service provider and a customer, which talk about some quality of service assurances. So for example, for one of our service, we guarantee that 99.5% of the requests should return, of the queries should return a response within 1 second. So these are some of the rules that we alert upon. So on the right, you see the Grafana alerting UI, where you can actually define expressions that you want to alert upon. And on the bottom left, there is a screenshot of a very popular application, PagerDuty, in which the on-call engineer is being paged for low disk space. Yeah, something. So cool, but if you operate in the realm of metrics, very quickly you run into this fancy new term called cardinality. So if you remember back from college days, cardinality refers to the number of items that are present in a set. In the context of metrics, cardinality represents the total number of values that the label sets of the metric can take. So here I'm exposing a very simple metric called HTTP request duration in seconds from my application. And here the metric just has one single tag. It's called app equals ice cream shop. And the value of this metric is 10 seconds. So this sort of gives me a higher level information that an HTTP request to my app, the ice cream shop, is taking 10 seconds to respond. But this is sort of a very bird's eye view of the application performance. It doesn't drill down and tell me which services are involved, how many services the request passed through, what was the latency of each service, and so on. All of this is possible with metrics, but when we add all of this information, the metric looks something like this. Now, as you can see, I've added more information to the metric about the data center, about the environment, about the particular service. I've even added fine-grained information about the particular function that took 10 seconds. But as you see with this sort of additional information, I've increased the cardinality of my metric a lot, because we can typically have multiple data centers, we can have a production and staging environment, we can have hundreds of services, we can have multiple API endpoints, and obviously we can have hundreds of customers. So the one problem that comes with storing, although this gives me a lot of fine-grained information, but the one problem that comes with this is the cost associated with storing it. So now that we've seen how metric plays into the monitoring space, let's look a little bit at logs. So this is a screenshot of Loki, which is the logging solution created by Grafana. We also run Loki in production. So in this screenshot, this is a screenshot of Loki from our production environment, in which I'm tailing the logs of a particular app called the TNS demo app. As you can see, it gives me the logs at the bottom, but here it also gives me a sort of graphical representation in which log lines are color coded by the log level. So an error log is shown by red, and a healthy log or an info level log is shown by blue or green. This is super useful because it pinpoints me to the exact timestamp where the logs started erroring out, and I can go and drill down further from there. So logs are super useful to check the health of a particular service because they're used to monitor events that occur in the service. So now the problem that comes with logs is that I've pasted some of the logs from our production environments. I've obviously changed some of the file names. I obviously don't have a file from my code base, but if you look at this log line, it tells me that I received an out of order sample, but it doesn't give me more context on it. Which service did this occur in? Of course, we can add all of that information. The second line is a little better. It tells me which file exactly logged the error. It tells me the line number, but I still don't have sort of a stack trace. And the flow from here is, I look at this error and then I manually need to browse through my code and figure out how the request reached this point in my program at all. So to wrap up, TLDR is too long, didn't read. By the way, it's a very popular abbreviation in blog posts, but I'm going to use it in my talk anyway. So the metrics part of telemetry has the primary use case of aggregations. But what we want in addition is more fine-grained information about the application. And logs have the primary use case of events, but we want more of a sort of stack trace debugging experience. We want to know the lifetime, the life cycle of a request that passes through the system, how many services it went through, which code paths were actually activated, and so on. So that brings us to the why we need fine-grained information like function level latency and also stack trace debuggability. And now we're going to look at how we achieve this. So the underlying principle that we use for distributed tracing is actually pretty simple. It's based on context propagation. So suppose my architecture looks something like this, right? I have 5 services and the edge service is A, which interacts with customers. Every time a request comes in, I actually attach a unique ID to that request. And every time, and then the service performs some quantum of work, which is called a span. And when the service makes a downstream request, it attaches the same unique ID to that request. So when A calls B and E services downstream, it attaches this unique ID. And similarly, when B calls C and D, it passes the context along. And now we can stitch together these spans because they're all tied with the same unique ID. And then a trace looks something like this, which is just a collection of spans. And it puts together the quantum of work performed by each of these services. And we'll see how this is useful. So to see that, we're actually going to switch to a demo of Jaeger. Jaeger is a very popular, it's a CNCF project. It's a very popular distributed tracing framework. And we're going to see how it works. So I'm going to switch to a demo. Move this. Okay, cool. That should be good enough. So Jaeger publishes a lot of Docker images, but for the purposes of this demo, we're just going to look at the all-in-one image, which is really useful for demo purposes. It's a single binary with all of the Jaeger components built in. So I already have the command because I ran it before to practice. So this command basically says that I'm going to run this image, the Jaeger tracing all-in-one, and I'm going to port forward 2 ports to this microservice, to this Docker container, which is 6831, which is useful for receiving spans, and 16686 is the query UI. So I'm just going to run this. Seems to have started. Cool. Now we have the Jaeger UI. And so this is the search UI that you will come across a lot if you're using Jaeger in production. And it's super informative. Like, I will consider myself a really good operator if I manage to tell you all of the features. For now, I've refreshed it. And as you can see, I already have a service which is being traced. If I go to this dropdown, it shows me that the Jaeger query is actually the one that's being traced because the Jaeger query component traces itself. And if I select that service from the dropdown and do find traces, it already shows me some traces, but these are not super interesting. We'll look at some application traces shortly. But the cool thing that you can see on the left in the search menu is that you can filter by operation. So these are the various endpoints that we have in the query service. We filter by all. We can also filter by some of the tags that are attached to the trace. We can choose the look back. So we can say, show me traces only in the last hour or so. And we can also say, only show me traces that have a minimum duration of 10 seconds and a maximum duration of, say, 20 seconds, and so on. And we can also limit the number of results. So now let's go and spin up our demo application. Cool. So the demo app is actually called Hot Rod. It's a sample app that distributes with the Jaeger open source project itself. And I'm going to start it by passing 2 parameters. One of this is the Jaeger agent host, which tells me, hey, I have a Jaeger agent, I have a Jaeger instance running on localhost, and this is the port that I need to forward my spans to. So I've started it. Let me go ahead and refresh this. Cool. So now we have this UI. It's a very simple demo application. It's called Rides on Demand, and it dispatches cabs to these like locations. So suppose I feel like having coffee this morning, so I'm going to go ahead and order a cab to this. So you can see that it tells me the license plate of the cab that's arriving to this destination. It tells me how long it's going to take, and this is some debugging information that we're going to find useful shortly. So now if I go to my Jaeger UI and I hit refresh, I can see that the number of services increased from 1 to 7. And now in this dropdown, I can see a bunch of services. I'm not sure what these are, but they seem to be coming from the demo application. So I'm going to go ahead to my system architecture, and there's a tag for the directed acyclic graph. And this seems to be messed up. Give me 1 second. I need to figure this out. Okay. Okay, so this is a little wrong, but we'll work around that for now. So the whole point is that this directed acyclic graph is supposed to give me enough information to tell me what are the services that are running in my environment. So this may not be useful if you design the architecture yourself, but if someone new is coming into your team from outside, it's super useful to show this graph and tell them about the different services that are running. Oops. And so it seems like I have 2 databases. I have a Redis and MySQL. I have a driver and customer service, and I also have a front end that interacts with them. So it already is a little intuitive because it tells me the different services that are running in the infra. And coming new to the team, this is super useful to get an insight about what's going on. So with that, let's switch back to the search panel again. And now from this service dropdown, I'm going to select front end, and I'm going to find traces. So right now I see 2 traces because one was to the empty /get point. When I refresh the page over here, it fired a query to the / endpoint. And when I dispatched the car, it sent one query to the dispatch endpoint. So at the top, there is a minimap that shows us latencies. So you can see that the HTTP request to the / endpoint actually took somewhere around 36 milliseconds. It's super fast. And to the dispatch endpoint, it took 700 milliseconds. This number actually correlates with the debugging information that we see here. This is slightly more because it's from a browser perspective, and this is from the server perspective. So this tells me that the latency between my front-end service, my browser, and the server is actually something around 9 milliseconds. So let me go And this is actually wrong. Give me 1 second. Let me just restart the server. Hit refresh. Hit refresh. Now, clicking order capture. Cool. So again, we're back to the same state, but I think there was an error with displaying. Cool. Yeah, this is much better. So over here, already by looking at this panel, it tells me all of the services that were involved in this request. So when I fired an empty, when I refreshed this page, it sent a query to the / endpoint, which is registered here. And you can see that only one service was involved in this request, the front end service. But when I hit the dispatch endpoint, all of these other services, the customer service, the driver, the front end, and all of these were also involved. It also tells me how long ago the trace reached the system. So let me go and click on this. So this is sort of the trace viewer, which is the most important part of the UI for Jaeger query. And we're going to walk through it a little because it has a lot of information. So right at the top, we can see that this was the front end operation that was called, which started this entire request. At the front end, an HTTP GET request was fired at the dispatch endpoint. At this particular time, it tells me when the trace started. It took 700 milliseconds. It had 6 services and it has 50 spans. When I walk down here, I can see a very intuitive layout of what operations the request performed as it traveled through my system. So I can see that it started off by hitting the front end endpoint, front end get dispatch endpoint. From there, it hit the customer service to get some information about the customer. And from there, it did a MySQL request. The cool part is if I actually click on this, it shows me additional information about the MySQL request. When I expand the tags, it actually shows me the SQL request that was performed. So the SQL query was so-and-so. And it tells me, the logs tell me that, hey, there were some transactions, there is some sort of a locking mechanism, and we need to acquire a lock before performing any select query. So just by looking at this, it already tells me so much information. You can see how much information is baked into a single trace. Without even looking at the source code of the application, I can get so much information about the application. So once the service collected information about the customer, it went ahead to find drivers that are close to me. So you can see that at this point, the SQL service concluded, and then the find nearest driver service was called. From here, you can see that it makes a couple of Redis calls, and I can also see that some of the Redis calls have failures. So if I click on this and expand it and expand the logs, it tells me that there was a Redis timeout when it was querying this particular driver ID. I can make sure that the following request, so this particular request timed out, and the following request would also be for the same driver ID because the previous one timed out. So this is already a lot of information. And then from there, once it got nearest information about the drivers that are close to me, it tried to find the route between the drivers and the customers, and then to find the driver that is close to me. And then so it made a couple of calls to the root service. So if I click on the top level root span and expand the logs, I can already see that all of these logs are attached to this particular trace. So you can ask me, why can't I see this with the logging solution itself, right? And that's because typically, right now we have just made a single request. So all of these logs are present in the application logs as well. But when we have hundreds of services hitting the production environment, all of these log lines are going to be mixed up. Log lines from multiple requests are going to be overlapping. So it's going to be very difficult to see what one particular service did. And because I have context propagation in my trace, I can see all the logs that were attached to this particular trace. So this is already giving me so much information about what the request did. It tells me an HTTP request was received. I fetched the customer, and then I found nearest drivers, and then I made a couple of root requests. So cool. Now, if I'm an operator and I see that, hey, why is my MySQL taking 300 milliseconds, right? After all, like, I know that this is an issue with my system, and I know that it shouldn't take so long. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that. Of course, this is because I know that this was the problem with the MySQL service. So I'm going to go ahead and try and fix that. I have a couple of enthusiastic dogs in the background, but I hope they're cheering me on. Cool. So now I'm going to go ahead, and after I've made the fix to the MySQL service, I'm going to order another cab to the coffee place. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh. I'm going to find traces. So this time I see that the service only took 517 milliseconds. And when I expand it, you can see that the latency for the MySQL service has reduced from 300 milliseconds down to just 98 milliseconds. So of course I knew that this was a problem with the demo application, so I could go ahead and fix it. And you can also confirm that this request, the driver ID that was dispatched was the same as what we received over here. So that also works. Cool. Now, another issue that I see is when my service takes, okay, give me 1 second. Cool. So I've restarted my application and I see that as I fire more and more requests, the latency of these requests is increasing a lot. It started out with 600 milliseconds, but as I fire more and more requests, the latency has climbed to almost 3 seconds, right? So I'm going to go ahead and query for the front end, for traces from the front end service again. And I can see at the top over here, it already gives me a very intuitive flow of how long the request took. So it started off with around 500 milliseconds. And then as the request kept coming in, the latency increased and it sort of peaked at 3 milliseconds. So let me look at one of the traces, which took 1.8 seconds apparently. And suddenly it seems like my MySQL latency has increased again. When I click on this and search for logs, it shows me that this request was waiting for a lock behind 4 other transactions. So this is pretty crazy, right? Like, how did this know about the other transactions that were waiting behind it? Well, all of this is possible with context propagation. You can see that this request, which actually returned this particular driver ID, was waiting behind 20, 21, 22, and 23. So it was waiting for these other 4 requests to finish before it could start working itself. So that's pretty crazy, right? Let's go ahead and fix that. So I've started the application again with the fix. And now when I order a cab, say this time I want to have some Japanese dessert. So this time I see that the latency does not increase even when I fire a lot of requests over time, right? So this is super useful because with one look of the trace, I could tell what was the problem with my infrastructure. If I go back and refresh for traces, I can see that they're all within the 500 to 700 millisecond range. So that's cool, we fixed that. Let's look at one last problem. So at the end, when it's trying to make a request to the route service to figure out the nearest driver, we see that, so all of these drivers have independent locations and we should be able to calculate the route parallelly, right? Why does this have sort of a waterfall sort of pattern in which it's making serial requests to the route service? That's because, well, I know that it's because of a worker pool that's operating. And I'm going to go ahead and fix that. And I'm going to increase the size of the worker pool to 10. I think it's been operating with 2 so far because only 2 requests are happening in parallel to the route service. As you can see, if I collapse these. So cool. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this again. And now when I fire a request and go back and look at the trace for it, it took much shorter because all of the requests to the root service happened in parallel. So that's pretty cool, right? We were able to debug a lot of issues with the service just by looking at traces. Yep, so that actually concludes my demo. And I'm going to switch back to my presentation. Cool. So now that we saw what the tracing app looks like, can we sort of give it the highest position in our monitoring stack for being the most useful tool of all time? Obviously, the answer is no, because each of these monitoring tools are useful in their own aspect. Metrics are aggregatable and they're useful for an overview into the system, to alert, and to get sort of SLA level guarantees, SLA level alerts. And logging is sort of a high volume thing which we use to monitor the events of a particular service. Tracing is somewhere in between, and it gives us fine-grained information as well as a stack trace debugging experience. So it's more useful when we're looking for performance optimizations. By the way, this is taken from a really awesome blog by Peter Bougon. I recommend you all to read it. So with that, let's look a little bit at the Jaeger architecture. So the Jaeger architecture has a lot of parts. We just use the single binary with all of the components baked in, but it's actually split into all of these parts, and we'll walk through this real quick. The Jaeger client is an SDK which we use to instrument the application. It could be written in the language, it's written in the language of the application. And these are some of the officially supported Jaeger clients. So we have Go, Java, Python, Node, and so on. And PHP and Ruby are unofficially, well, community maintained SDKs, sorry. So the Jaeger client actually dispatches spans to a Jaeger agent, which is a very lightweight process that sits close to the application. If you're running it in Kubernetes, it could be a sidecar, or if you're running on bare metal, it could be like a process running on the same machine, and it listens for spans over UDP, and it forwards them to the Jaeger collector, which is a central component. We can have multiple clusters and have agents in all of those clusters, but the Jaeger collector is common, and the agents forward all of these traces to the central collector. Well, this could depend on the volume of traces flowing through the system, of course, but this is sort of like the general practice. The Jaeger agent is also super useful because it can buffer spans in case the link between these two data centers breaks. And the Jaeger collector is super useful. It has the database drivers. So Jaeger officially supports Cassandra, Elasticsearch, Badger, and it also has a HashiCorp plugin. So you can bring in your own database and plug it in, and if you implement the gRPC side of the server. And the Jaeger collector is also super useful to supply sampling information. So if you want to change the amount of sampling or the amount of traces that you store, you can supply the Jaeger collector sampling information, and this will be back channeled through to the Jaeger client without having to update it with a new config map or without having to restart the process. It is dynamically updated. And then the collector also performs some sort of denormalization and stores it into the database. We have Spark jobs that actually help us calculate the dependencies between the services. So the dependencies tab that we looked at right at the very beginning, that is calculated by the Spark jobs. And then we have the Jaeger query and UI. So this is about what has been done so far. Let's look a little bit about the upcoming work that's happening in Tracing Land. So one of the most important features that's being worked on right now relates to data volume. So typically 99% of the traces that we see in a production environment are healthy, hopefully. If your application is performing well, then, well, most of the traces look almost alike and they don't have any errors and they're working perfectly. So, well, why do we need to store all of these traces? Why do we need to increase our operational cost just to store all of these traces that look almost similar? We can sample down and just store one or a few representative traces, right? And more importantly, we want to catch the traces that are erroring out or have higher latencies and so on. But in most cases, the sampling is performed at the Jaeger client. It's performed upfront, and it's called head-based sampling. So typically what happens is we use a probabilistic sampler and we say, hey, just sample 1 out of 100 traces or 1 out of 1,000 traces. And while this is super useful and it's a statistically correct representation of the system, we may miss out on some error traces, which may be 1 out of 1,000,000 maybe. And what we want to do is typically capture those because those are the most interesting traces. All the other traces are healthy and they look almost similar. So instead of sampling at the client, what we need to do is move sampling to a component that actually has information about all the traces that are passing through the system. And this is the Jaeger collector. So this is something that I implemented and I blogged about it. The link is at the bottom. And this is called tail sampling. So in tail sampling, what we do is we can perform sampling up front, but the tail sampler operates at the Jaeger collector level, and it buffers the traces in memory. And at the collector level, we can define some sort of conditionals and say, hey, only if the trace exceeds latency of 10 seconds, then sample it. Or if it has an error tag, then sample it. Or if it passed through these particular services, then sample it. And this is sort of very powerful because it helps us to throttle down and store only the representative traces, the traces that actually have errors or took long. We don't have to spend a lot of operational cost to store most of the interesting traces. And one obvious advantage of this, as you can see, is this graph at the top shows the incoming traffic. And you can see that at 10 a.m. or p.m., I'm not sure, the number of requests to the system spiked. But at the bottom, you can see that my internet connection is unstable. So at the bottom, you can see that the count of traces sampled actually remained the same, because probably most of the traces that occurred during that time were healthy and they were dropped. So you can see over here, the count of traces dropped, went up. So this is super useful because even when you have a spike in traffic to your infrastructure, you can just store the interesting traces. You can continue to store the interesting traces. So this is useful. Another cool feature that is coming shortly is exemplars. So if you've not seen this graph before, it's actually a representation of a Prometheus histogram. It's sort of a hotspot tracker. So the darker the spot is at a particular time, it tells me that most of my requests had the latency between 10 and 25 milliseconds, for example. This is the darkest spot. And so this is super useful because just one look at this can tell me how many traces, what is sort of the median or the average for the service latency. Now, with exemplars, what we plan to do is make all of these points clickable. So if I see that a service has taken more than, say, 500 milliseconds of latency, I can directly click on that spot and it'll take me to a trace that had that much latency. So this is going to be super useful because right now the flow is, if we see that we have service with a high latency, then we go to the Jaeger UI and then we search, and we may or may not actually even find that trace. So it can be super frustrating when we don't find it. And this is going to make that flow a lot more intuitive and easy. Some part of this work has already been done, and you can check out this talk by Rob, where he talks about deep linking metrics and traces. Another cool feature that we're working on at Grafana is the Grafana Trace Viewer. So I'm going to switch to Grafana in our production environment. And I'm tailing the logs of a particular service called the TNS demo. Again, seems to be pretty popular. I'm going to refresh this and look at logs from the last hour. And then in my log, I'm logging the trace ID of this particular request. And when I click on it, it directly takes me to the trace for that particular request. And within the Grafana UI itself, you can now expand all of these and see the life cycle of the request that passed through the system. So some work has been done to work with the Jaeger team to integrate Jaeger libraries into Grafana. You can read more about it in the links below. So cool, with that, we come to the end and we'll talk a little bit about getting involved. Jaeger is a very popular CNCF graduated project, and the community is super friendly. Everyone is out there to help. And if you want to get involved, please reach out. These are where some of the maintainers hang out. And if you're looking for good first issues to contribute, this is the link. With that, I've reached the end of my talk. I'm going to stop presenting.
Hey, thanks, Anane. That was like a very good introduction to Jaeger and the whole tracing ecosystem as a whole. You covered like significant topics, right? You know, what is tracing, what is sampling, and the whole demo basically worked.
Another quick, you can stop recording and restart once in the second talk, I think.
Okay, sure. Let me go ahead and do that.
We'll take questions, right?
Oh yeah, we can do that.
Pranay, can you see the questions link.
Just that, Ananya, can you stop the recording?
Let's stop after.
Let's skip it on till the questions. Right?
Questions.
Acha, aisa?
Yep.
Acha,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Let's also have the Q&A on it.
Cool. So let me just. I think you guys can also see the question. Ananya,
Yeah,
can you see
I
the
can.
questions?
Yep. Let me just browse through this chat.
Yeah, just browse through that.
Abhishek Saini asks, works if you deploy your solution at customer side and pull metrics to. Okay, this is not a question. Traces are just detailed flame graphs. Well, not really, because
No. I meant in the Slido link. So there's a Slido link where people have posted questions.
okay, can you?
Yeah, I mean, can you repost that link to on the chat so that, and then you can just browse through that.
I found the link. Let me just go
Oh, great.
with
Thanks,
my
man.
insanely slow internet.
Or do you want me to ask that? Maybe that would be better.
I see the questions. I see the questions. No issues. So Anonymous asks, what should be the storage strategy for these traces? How many traces should be stored and for how long? So this obviously depends on the kind of infrastructure that you have and how much you're willing to invest in storage. We at Grafana do storage for 2 days. We store traces in Jaeger for 2 days. This can get a little tricky because if an issue occurred on Friday, then when we come back on Monday, the trace is gone. But this can be worked around because the Jaeger UI allows us to save some traces. So we can download the trace JSON. And if we see some interesting traces, you can actually download the JSON of the trace and then load it back into the Jaeger UI on a Monday, and then you can have the trace available. So this all depends on how much the organization is willing to invest. Actually, let me start from the bottom. How do you monitor the Jaeger agent? So the Jaeger agent exposes some metrics and they're super useful. I think we've never run into issues where we don't know what the agent is doing. The metrics are pretty exhaustive and they talk about all of the performance aspects of the Jaeger agent. The detailed link of the metrics will be available at the Jaeger in the Jaeger docs. Any idea on performance penalty? Hopefully it doesn't block the main thread when sending data to tracing backend. So thanks for the question, Darshan. This can be tricky. So typically we try to run the agent very close to the application so that it has to do very little work to offload the trace to the agent. And this doesn't affect, it of course adds a few milliseconds of latency, but beyond that, we haven't seen it to affect performance in any way. So I hope that answers your question. And also the Jaeger client dispatches these over UDP. So they're super lightweight and we don't see too much of a performance impact. Where can I find those Grafana dashboards that you showed for Jaeger all-in-one monitoring? I've tried to attach links to all of the slides, but if I missed out.
Can I take a question, Anand?
Yeah,
Hi.
sure, go ahead.
Sure, go ahead.
Can I take that question?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. So, I mean, there are, as of now, sort of two available open source dashboards on, I think. There are a couple of, was this an OpenTelemetry dashboard or was this a Jaeger dashboard?
I'm actually going through my slides to see
okay, cool,
particular
so,
dashboard.
Yeah, then it's a different one.
No, he came back.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
Ananya, you can go ahead with the rest of the questions.
Yeah. So the coming back to the monitoring, the dashboard question, the Jaeger agent actually has a mixin. So I'll try to send the link for it. And that actually mixin is a collection of dashboards and alerts that you can use to monitor any of the services. So I'll try and send in the link for that. Is Exemplar available to try out? So this is a work in progress. We are trying to make this available as soon as possible, but I think it's going to be a couple of months before it comes out. I'm not too sure about the timeline. I only see 3 questions. What is the data model? What is the data model of the traces? Specifically, which sort of database would excel at storing the traces at scale? This is, well, this is sort of a longer discussion that we can fit into a Q&A sort of a format. But if you want to see the data model of the traces, I can link into the actual trace format that Jaeger uses. But just keep in mind that we're moving away from Jaeger. Sort of the open source community is coming together to agree on a new spec, which I think Hashfire will talk about in a few minutes, which is the open telemetry spec. And that is the model that most future tracing frameworks are going to use. As to which sort of database would excel at storing traces, this is very subjective. So we use Scylla. At Grafana, we actually use Scylla, which has the same sort of features as Cassandra. So it's a pluggable backend. You can plug out Cassandra and use Scylla. And we have not run into too many issues with using this at scale. And we ingest something around 15 to 20,000 traces per second. So, but of course, Elasticsearch also, with Elasticsearch as well, users have, 15 to 20,000 spans per second. And with Elasticsearch as well, users have a really good experience. So yeah, all of these databases are available. Will each service send its part of the information to the tracing backend, or the front-end service sends the entire thing? So each service actually sends information to the tracing backend, and then it's stitched together in the backend. So with Jaeger particularly, all of these traces, all of the components send information to their respective agents. We could have different services in different clusters as well, and they can have their own agents. They send everything to the collector, and then the collector performs an insert and update every time it sees a span. Why does the client use UDP to send data and not Unix domain sockets? Okay, I am not sure about this. I think that UDP works well enough. It's pretty lightweight. And I'm not sure why it was not designed to use Unix domain sockets.
Yeah, I think we are done with all the questions. Thanks, Ananya, for the talk.
Yeah, no issues.
I think we are already. And folks who had like more detailed questions will ping the link for the Telegram group where like more expert people hang out. So we can, like, you can have longer discussions there. So thanks, Ananya. Thanks for the talk. And I'll now call upon Hashfire for presenting.
Thank you so much.
We are already, yeah. So we are already running a bit behind schedule. So Hashfire, over to you. Maybe you also introduce yourself. I think you already introduced yourself, but just a recap of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, that's the introduction. Cool. I mean, just let me set this up. Sorry. So I'm like trying to join as my demo laptop is on the side, so I'm trying to like join it from there so that I can at the end like present the demo. Let's see if I can make that happen. But yeah. So the demo wasn't really on the track, but then I mean, given what how nicely Ananya has sort of shown us, I thought like, you know, I might try it. Let's see. We'll come to it when it sort of is there. But yeah, let's see this. Okay, I hope like my screen is visible to everyone, right?
Hashfire, is there a way you can reduce the echo, or like, or is it like by default?
I'm not really sure.